And joining me now is Daniel McClory, Managing Director and Head of Equity Capital Markets, Head of China at Boustead Securities. So thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Eric.
All right, so first let's talk about how long this goes on. How long does this China trade war with the U.S. go on before somebody finally says, all right, it's time for us to actually start talking again? We keep hearing there might be talks in September.
It's going to get resolved before the election.
Yeah.
That's
You think so?
absolutely for
Okay.
sure. Absolutely. It has to be. There are too many things hanging in the balance. China believes they are going to time out Mr. Trump, and he's going to have to either buckle before the election or somebody else is going to be elected. So it will definitely come to a head well before then.
Okay, so you don't think that they're going to try and wait it out and see what happens after the election?
They will,
Okay.
but Trump's not going to allow it.
Okay.
He's got too many cards on his side of the table, from a strong economy to a lot of fundamentals in his favor. So even though this is tumultuous and it's very gut-wrenching, day to day, he's got his strategy.
There are a lot of folks who say that China's willing to risk a global recession here. Do they have, for lack of a better term, a trump card that they can play?
They do. I mean, they could sort of go nuclear and just decide we can take it down as low as you want to go.
Right.
But, so much of this, Eric, is psychological.
Right.
There's reality day to day with the stock market up and down and the yuan being devalued. But when I look at it, there's three numbers that come to mind that really are psychological, but people pay a lot of attention to them. The first number is 1, so it's about $1 trillion in treasuries that China owns. So everybody says, well, they could dump those treasuries.
That would be their nuclear option.
Exactly. And what would that do? So that would immediately devalue the rest of their holdings. If they had to reinvest that money, where they go? Germany get half a point? I don't think so. The next number is 3, and that's $3 trillion of foreign exchange reserves that China has. And that is an important psychological barrier. And what would happen if the yuan keeps going down, then there'll be capital flight from China, and then they will ultimately have to start deploying some of those reserves. And if they get under $3 trillion, people get a little wacky in Beijing. And of course, the last number is 7, which has to do with the yuan to the dollar. And again, all these things far more psychological than real, but I think you're going to see triggers placed along each of 1, 3, and 7.
It seems as though these psychological triggers, though, are having an impact on Wall Street. We've seen the markets in kind of a frenzy or a tizzy for the past few days. Today, you had the Dow down almost 600 points, bounced back up. Quite a comeback today. That had to do with it had to do with treasuries.
Yes.
But it also had to do with, and that was all tied in with what people are fearing could be down the pike, right?
Mm-hmm. For sure. And again, this is just the fear and greed that's ebbing and flowing, but you had the reason the markets came back. There was profit taking. People were saying, look, those stocks are a steal at those prices. They're not that bad. This is a temporary condition. And again, fundamentally, despite the fears of a recession, there are a lot of good indicators in the U.S., which again gives Trump a lot of confidence for his base and for his reelection. And ultimately, the market, when it wakes up and says we're maybe being a little reactive and irrational here, we shouldn't be so negative as we are.
Interesting. All right, Dan McClory, thank you so much for being here. Gold actually went back up to $1,500 an ounce as well.
It sure did.
Yeah.
It sure did.
Safe haven investments. All right.
I'll say.
All right, thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Eric.